Gary Stein, Sentinel High School, 4th period, 10:40 on January the 12th, 2001. How's 39. That? You don't need any pen, paper, books, anything, so go ahead and put them all away, and all you need is your mind. Love would be wonderful. So Kayla, if you could put that away, that'd be great. This is just one of those times when you can't do Spanish or math or anything else, so it's a good time to just...
Or God forbid history.
Or heaven forbid you would do any sort of history self-assignment. So here's the deal. You guys all have a day off on Monday, in case you didn't realize that by now. I knew you did realize that. And every day before Martin Luther King Day, I do this, and not with the cameras. Do this because of some stuff that I want to get across to you, and the only way to do it is by stopping everything. We don't have a huge black community here, in case you didn't notice, in Missoula, Montana. And there's a lot of people who walk around saying, you know, why? You know, it seems like, you know, it's not bad having a day off. I'm not arguing that. But people say, why should we do this? And, you know, we're not black. We don't have a big black population. You know, it's great in New York or Detroit, but what significance does it have for us? And I want to remind you about a couple of things. One is you wrote lists early in the year about the 10 most influential people in American history. Most of your lists, I think, did contain Dr. King, but they also contained George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, you know, quote-unquote, the famous people. We've been conditioned over a long period of time to accept the heroes that we read in the book, and it's harder to go find some other heroes, harder to go find some other people as models that define what it means to be an American, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly of being an American. Remember when we talked about Tecumseh, I made it plain that Tecumseh was not a great Indian leader, that Tecumseh was a great American leader. Because the things that he was talking about, the things that he was trying to organize, the Choctaw and the Chickasaw and the Creek and all those tribes, was about the ideals that we all think are pretty important. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, justice, freedom, you know, the right to do what we want to do in our own worlds without being persecuted for that. And in much the same way, I think the holiday on Monday and the recognition of Dr. King's life is the same thing. I don't look at Dr. King as being a great black leader. I just think of him as being a great American because he helped us to define who we are. And I'm not expecting any of you to, on Monday, go to the parades and, you know, to spend your whole day dedicated to the memory of Dr. King and the ideals that he put in front of us. But I think it's important that you have some recognition. Now, in your lives, I mean, you're old enough now where you've been indoctrinated about a lot of stuff about Dr. King. In fact, he may be the only black person, maybe other than Malcolm X, who shows up on your list of influential Americans. And that's great. That's fine. The thing you probably know the most about Dr. King, of course, is the I Have a Dream speech, which you have here in front of you in an edited form. And that's fine. I'm not showing you the I Have a Dream speech. First of all, is there anybody in this room who has not even heard of this speech? Has no knowledge of it whatsoever? Exactly. That's my point, is that we have been indoctrinated about this particular speech. It's a glorious speech. It's a glorious moment. Great potential, great hope, great possibilities. What I want to show you is about an 18-minute clip of film from the series Eyes on the Prize, and it's the end of Dr. King's life. And in case you don't know, in 1968 there was a strike of garbage workers, sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, and Dr. King was asked to provide some support for that. So this is the story of those last couple of days, last month of his life, and there's a particular speech at the end. It's the last speech that he gives in his life, and it's just a fascinating moment. It only takes a couple of minutes, really, but it's fascinating because you get the sense that with everything this guy's gone through, he knows that he's not long for this world. He almost knows that he's going to die, and it's going to happen sooner rather than later, and he's saying that that's all right. Shiraz has on the wall by the library some Dr. King stuff, and one of the things that's important for you to recognize is the statement that says, if a man doesn't have something, and he meant people, if a person doesn't have something that they're willing to die for, then that's really kind of a wasted life. And I know at 17 years old, if we asked you what you'd be willing to die for, you'd probably say your families, and that's legitimate, and your friends, you know, whoever they are. But at some point in your life, you may be asked to make that decision in a little bit more intense way or a more general way about an idea. Are you willing to fight and die or to defend a particular idea to the point of death? And so all I really am asking for you today is to just sort of take in what you're going to see and hear. but more importantly, to take a minute, literally 60 seconds on Monday, just for some appreciation for the fact that you're skiing or sleeping late or partying or whatever it is you're going to do on Monday because somebody decided it was worth dying for, literally. That he was really thinking about you, about me, and about all of us, and that is a great American sort of idea, that people are willing to go all the way to the wall to give up their life and blood so we can go skiing, in effect, so that we can sleep late, you know, those things that we just sort of take for granted, you know, that we have a choice to do those things, and we shouldn't take them for granted. Because we do live in a country with all the bad news we've been giving you about U.S. history in the last few months. The good news is we still have a certain degree of freedom, more than other places around the world, where I can sleep late, where I can go do what I want to do, where I can go to a school board and complain about the way teachers are treated. And that's a pretty precious gift. So at 17, I don't expect you to have that yet, but you will at some point, and I just wanted you to see a little part of the story of how that comes about and how a person gives up their life for our benefit. And so a minute, that's all you need. A minute on Monday to just reflect and appreciate that sort of stuff. And you don't have to write anything down, you don't have to do a self-assignment, you don't have to go to a march and sing, "We will overcome." But if you just have some appreciation for that, then the man doesn't die in vain. And that's sort of the point of the whole thing. So play this piece of tape, runs about 18 minutes. It's about Memphis, 1968, and the end of Dr. King's life, but not the end of his work. And then I want to play a song for you. Stevie Wonder wrote in 1980. This song was written, and there were a lot of people, and probably still are plenty of mostly white folks today, who were like, what a waste. I can't believe we're taking a day off for this guy. We have teachers in this building who don't believe that it's valuable to commemorate Dr. King's life. And they say things like, well, he slept with other women, and he cheated on some tests and things of that nature. They miss the big picture, and they just say, well, that makes him a bad person. Whether you like Bill Clinton or not, I'm not sure if he's a good or bad president just by virtue of the Monica Lewinsky case. So the same thing is true here. We all have blemishes. We're not perfect creatures. So we're not saying Dr. King is perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but we are saying he made a huge contribution to who we are, how we define ourselves, and the freedoms that we appreciate. So Stevie Wonder wrote a song that's much more positive and upbeat, and it's got a 1980s techno synth pop beat, so you might not like the style, although Gabe may dance. But I'll flash the words up there for you so you can check them out and read them for yourself. So enjoy your day off and hopefully spend that 1 minute just reflecting on the possibilities and on the significance or meaning of it. So, you ready, Gabe?
Word.
Word up.
Few were paying attention
George
to
Wallace.
the labor conflict in Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee. A bitter strike of black garbage workers echoed the issues of the Poor People's Campaign, the same issues King planned to bring to Washington.
And I had 7 kids in school, trying to educate my kids and trying to buy a home. It was really rough. But I know that something had to happen, that we couldn't continue on making $1.04 an hour.
The city refused to recognize the local sanitation workers union. In late January, the union accused the city of racial bias. Days later, 2 black workers were accidentally killed on the job. Their families were not entitled to compensation. The workers decided they had had enough.
So we decided we were going to be men and stand up and be men, and that's what we did. 1,300 men decided that they was tired and we're going to take it anymore.
I say to you that I was with you for 4 years and you know me. And that when I tell you something, you can believe it. We are working.
Mayor Loeb's attitude toward the strikers was that of a father whose children had gone astray. He simply didn't understand that instead of a garbage strike, he had a racial problem, and he never did understand that.
The mayor refused to negotiate with the union. 11 days into the strike, the city's black leaders marched with the workers.
The march went fine for 2 or 3 blocks. But as we approached Madison Street, I think, the policemen began to come in and to move us over further and further to the curb.
Tempers flared. Police moved in with nightsticks and mace.
They fired upon us, and that was the turning point. And if they would fire upon us, they would fire upon anybody. Nobody was safe in Memphis.
The strike entered its second month. Strike leader James Lawson asked his friend Martin Luther King to come to Memphis.
The staff was really disturbed that Martin would even consider going to Memphis. We were trying to organize poor whites, Hispanics, Southern blacks, Northern blacks. I mean, there was just a tremendous organizing job. And I didn't know how you could take on anything else. And he said, well, Jim Lawson has been around for so long, and here garbage workers on strike. He just wants me to come in and make a speech and then lead a march in the morning. And I'll be right back.
The attitude of the white community was one of dread. There's no other way to describe it. Please bear in mind that all of us who could read knew about Watts and Newark and Detroit and all of the troubles that we'd had in our big city ghettos. And we knew about the March, Selma, Alabama, and Mrs. Montgomery, and Rosa Parks in Montgomery, excuse me. All these things we knew, and somehow or other, the name of Martin Luther King Jr. was associated with deep trouble. And Memphis dreaded his approach.
All labor has dignity. But you're doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
King's Poor People's Campaign was scheduled to start in less than a month, but he promised to return to Memphis. The next morning, in Mississippi, he resumed his recruiting.
We were very excited about this Poor People campaign that he spoke about. It's the first time that the concentration had been on poor peoples and their living conditions. And we wanted to be a part of that. That's what we have been working toward. We felt through voter registration that political power would bring economic power. Then we were able to turn people out to hear him that had never been to a mass meeting before.
I'm not the only one. There's just so many of us right around. It's just, don't have children, don't have shoes, clothes, just to go around. They's naked and hungry. Part time you have to cook your children pinto beans morning, down, and supper. They don't know what else get a good meal. We go work in this lady's house for $2 a day. If we don't want to do that, she tell us, well, you got to move.
Now, I want some of you all to go to Washington with us. Even if you have to bring your whole family, we are going to have in Washington facilities, and we're going to have food, and we are going to demand that the government do something about these conditions. Greg, tell Jose and Ralph to rush on. Hello, give me some.
Despite King's personal popularity, SCLC had trouble recruiting people.
Glad to see you.
As he traveled north, King met more indifference.
March on down to Washington.
The South is a different place than New York.
Well, that's true.
You can't tell the young kids today this in Harlem that nonviolence. You can't get through to them with nonviolence today. You have to have some type of other approach with them. And I say that Dr. King's approach is a little outdated for Harlem, for Bedford-Stuyvesant, or any part of New York.
King's nonviolent approach would be directly challenged when he returned to Memphis. On the morning of March 28th, a tense and restless crowd waited 2 hours before King arrived. The strike was in its 7th week. Some younger supporters had grown impatient with the strike leaders.
While we were marching, I was about in the first 1/3 of the march, as I could tell at that point. We began to hear windows breaking. We began to hear, loud rustling and uneasiness among the marchers. And then we began to see individuals who were stepping out of the march and throwing things at one dude.
When all the doors started breaking and the noise and the police cars were running, the sirens, and everybody was all confused and just running over each other.
Fearing for King's safety, his aides commandeered a passing car and drove him to a nearby hotel. It was the first time King had led marchers who had turned to violence. Secluded for the night, he braced himself for criticism. If he couldn't control a single march in Memphis, how could he control a mass movement of poor people in the nation's capital? The FBI, monitoring King in Memphis, used its press contacts to create doubts about the upcoming campaign in Washington. The strike continued. SCLC staffers worked to ensure nonviolence at the next march. A distraught King and his closest aide, Ralph Abernathy, left for Atlanta.
That evening we went to the Abernathys for dinner, and we spent the evening at their home. And Martin, of course, liked to eat, and Mrs. Abernathy had some of his favorite food and even homemade ice cream.
And we did not talk about Memphis. The news came on, and whenever there was a flash on TV about it, he got very quiet, and he was really, really sort of depressed. And I think he was more depressed that night, I believe, than I'd ever seen him, because the violence really got to him.
Visibly exhausted, King continued his campaign for the poor. Sunday, March 31st, he spoke at the National Cathedral in Washington.
This is America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. And the real question is whether we have the will.
On April 3rd, King returned to Memphis to prove that nonviolence could work. SCLC planned to challenge a court injunction blocking the next march. King hoped to avoid speaking at that night's rally and to rest instead at the Lorraine Motel.
There was a tornado warning in Memphis that evening, and it was raining, and wind was blowing everywhere. I believe a little tornado came to Memphis also. And he knew that there would not be a big crowd. And he said to me in the meeting with the staff, Ralph, I want you to go and speak this evening at the mass meeting.
And he didn't want to go to that meeting that night. He said he had sent Reverend Abernathy over, and he said, because I just didn't feel like going, but it's thundering and lightning here. We have a thunderstorm taking place. He said, but you know, Ralph has just called and said that I needed to come over. And so the people were waiting for me, and they really didn't want anybody else to speak but me. So he said, I guess I'll go on over there, and I'll call you later. He said, I'll call you tomorrow night.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. So just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
The next day, I was in the federal court. We got the injunction thrown out, and we got our permission to march, and I guess about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, I came back to the Lorraine Motel, and I found Martin and A.D. and Ralph and everybody gathered there, and they'd been eating and had lunch and were talking and clowning, and when I came in, Martin just grabbed me and threw me down on the bed and started beating me with a pillow. I mean, he was like a big kid. And he was fussing because I hadn't reported to him, and I tried to tell him I was on the witness stand, I'm here in the federal court, and he was, you know, just standing on the bed swinging the pillow at me, and I'm trying to duck with him saying, you have to let me know what's going on, you know. And finally, I snatched a pillow and started swinging back, and you know, and everybody, it was sort of like the you know, after you make a touchdown, and everybody piles on everybody. It was just, I mean, people just started throwing pillows and piling on top of everybody and laughing and going on. And then he stopped and said, let's go, you know, we do a dinner at 6, and it was at that time about 6 o'clock. And he went on up to his room to, you know, to put on a shirt and tie. And Martin came out and asked, you think I need a coat? And we said, yeah, it's pretty cool, and you've had a cold, you better go back and get a coat. And he said, I don't know whether I need a coat. You know, and the next thing we know, a shot. Well, I thought it was a car backfiring, a firecracker.
And I jumped naturally. And I turned and saw only his feet. And I ran to him and took his head into my hands and began to pat his cheek and said, Martin, this is Ralph, this is Ralph, this is Ralph. It will be all right. Everything is gonna be all right. Everything is gonna be all right, Martin.
An hour after he was shot, Martin Luther King Jr. died.
They go on to talk about a number of different things in the aftermath of his death, and I am not intending to leave you here sad and depressed about that. But before I play the next thing for you, Jenny, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here or anything, but and I may be wrong, but when he was given that last speech, did I see us get a little kind of?
I was laughing.
We laughed? Oh, I thought you were getting kind of worked. Well, that's laughing was getting worked up. So I just didn't know. You seemed to have a kind of startled response to it. It seemed almost shocking more than anything else.
I'd be interested in that actually. Is what kind of
Yeah.
response did people have to that? If you had to give like a one-word response, what would it be?
Microphones always instill fear in people. What was amazing about it?
Amazing why someone would want to do that to another person who's working towards peace. That's why it's amazing.
What about what was amazing about the speech itself? That last,
The speech that he thought, or that he's found, like what he'd been looking for, the Word of God, or heaven, so to speak, where everybody really wants to be. And he's not afraid of any man at that point. Right. He's not afraid of dying or what's going to happen next. He knows he's reached the point to where he's need to be.
Right. We're going to talk about a guy named John Brown later in the year who's going to use kind of the same argument, that he was inspired by God to do something, although he's going to act in a much more violent way. But that's something you should consider. I'm not saying you should be religious or not religious, but sometimes you do feel these universal things, and then you just feel like you have to do something. It's like a mission. And I think that's the point he had gotten to. So you're right. Time became pretty irrelevant. Just, this is what I do. And he was consumed by that more than anything else. And I maintain that he was consumed by us, by future generations, by people who hadn't even been born yet, sort of what the Iroquois Constitution was all about. So not to bum you out, but to remind you that, people die all the time. In psychology, we talk about death and dying and the reality of accepting it. And living is much more important. Stevie Wonder wrote this song. I'll flash the lyrics up here for you. I imagine Gabe will start the line dance, and you're welcome to dance, but I'd like you to look at the lyrics while this is playing, and this runs about 6 minutes. When this is done, when the song is done, Sarah has something that she needs to tell us about, right? You can tell us something. Yeah. Okay. So listen to this, read the words, or follow along with the bouncing ball, and enjoy your weekend. That 80s synth pop sound. Oh yeah.
much we love you, and I'm sure you would agree. What could fit more perfectly than to have a world party on the day you came to be? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. I just never understood how a man who died for good could not have a David Woods. He said, aside for his recognition, because it can never be, just because some cannot see, the dream is clear as he, that they should make it become an illusion, and we all know everything that each different time will bring, or in peace our heart will sing, thanks to Martin Luther King. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Why has there never been a holiday? Yeah. Where peace is celebrated all throughout the world. Time is overdue for people like me and you who know the way true is love and unity to all of God's children. Should be afraid of this, and the whole day should be spent in full remembrance of those who lived and died for the oneness of all people. So let us all begin. We know that love can win, but life don't hold it in. Say it loud as you can. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. We know the key to unity of all people is in the dream that you had so long ago that lives in all of the hearts of people. Just believe in unity. We'll make the dream become a reality. I know we will. Because our hearts tell us something.
.15 K93 FM. That's Stevie Wonder from Hotter Than July on a snowy Friday morning. 24 degrees outside. We got the weather forecast coming up for you in just a couple of minutes. Don't forget Martin Luther King.
What do you guys think of this video clip that you just got to see?
I thought it was sad. was really sad. And I thought he was a really good speaker because he had a really like powerful voice and stuff.
I don't know if that's a Have you ever had any experience with racism?
Yeah, with well, I noticed even like people kind of segregate against white people too, because like black people have that like kind of built-up aggression of what happened, and not all black people, but sometimes they still have kind of a thing towards white people, you know, and for even like Hispanics and others.
But white people still have it too.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm just saying like it's just all because I handed it to you, Mr. Stein. I hope you didn't lose it.
I don't know, most people, and there's a lot of like prejudiced people in Missoula.
Have you ever experienced any of that? Have you ever heard your friends say anything?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I know lots of people that are prejudiced. Can I see that? I personally am not, but.
It will.
Like I know someone who has a deal with another minority, like Asians, has issues with that, and won't even like buy a foreign car because of it, because of World War II.